Paranormal or not, what was the scariest thing to ever happen to you? I was laying in bed one evening as a 16-year-old. All of a sudden, I felt what I can only describe as a mild electrical current going through my body. A split second later, a voice in my head, not mine, nor could I categorize it as male or female, said over and over, "Turn on the light, turn on the light, turn on the light." I lay there confused for a few seconds. Then the electrical current got stronger and my bed started to gently shake. It was a single ensemble on wheels, and the floor was slate. The voice was still going, and by this time, I felt a little paralyzed by fear. The bed began shaking violently and actually started banging against the wall, all the while the voice was becoming more urgent. I sat up and put my feet on the ground. The voice and bed shaking then stopped. The light was still off. I looked to my left and in my wardrobe mirror, could see a person standing with their right hand on their right hip. The person would have been standing directly in front of me, but with their left side toward my front. They were in the mirror, but they sure as heck weren't in front of me. I jumped up and turned on the light. The whole experience probably took 30 seconds. Slept with the light on that night. I also began locking my door after this experience. I had a room that was once an outside shed, but had been converted to a bedroom. Not too many nights after, a male attempted to get into my room. I could tell by the size of them, they were unable to do to the locked door. I didn't make the connection at the time, but I'm pretty sure I was being protected by someone or something with all the turn on the light and bed shaking. Not too sure about that figure though. We were playing hide and seek back then. Knowing my cousins were scared of the dark, I hid in the basement. I don't exactly know what happened, but everybody in the house started calling my name. I can even hear my mother crying while shouting out my name. I thought that this was a tactic my cousins initiated to make me shout and make me blow away my spot. Then one of my aunt entered the basement and searched everywhere with a flashlight while I was just sitting literally in front of her while she was shouting my name. Her worried face she was making while rummaging through the objects made me cry. When she went out of the basement, I immediately followed her outside and declared that I was there. Everyone started crying, saying they searched for me for almost an hour while I was just hiding for what felt like about 5 minutes. To this day, I still don't know if my family was trolling me, but I was 5 that time, and it scared the heck out of me. I was tormented by something when I was a toddler. My parents lived on a military base when I was 2 to 3 years of age. Prior to this, my great aunt had bought me an ornate clock that ran on AA batteries and was covered in little gnomes. My father had removed the batteries from the clock as the ticking could be heard on the baby monitor, which annoyed him at night. This will be important later. One night, my father was sitting in the lounge room when he saw a black quadrupedal creature rush past the hallway door in the corner of his eye. Being late at night, he said he thought nothing of it and went back to watching his show. On several other occasions, he encountered the same thing. The part where this got real for him was one night, he and my mother were together one night when once again, Dad saw the dog-like figure walk past the doorway again. Mom noticed him looking over to the doorway, and even though they had never discussed it before, she turns to him and said, "I've seen it too." The part where my torment comes in is that late at night, my parents were often woken to me screaming in the middle of the night. These weren't your typical cries of a toddler, but the screams you associate with people who are terrified. Mom and Dad would come into my room to find me sitting upright facing the end of the bed and screaming. This happened on multiple occasions. One thing that always creeped Dad out was that the battery-less clock would start ticking through the baby monitor in my bedroom moments before I started screaming. On one occasion, Dad claimed to have seen the dog-like figure run from my bedroom when he came to stop me from screaming. I don't know if this is just my memory playing tricks on me or if it was something so traumatic that I do remember it even though I was very young, but I do recall a black humanoid figure standing at the end of the bed staring at me menacingly as a child. This has scared me to the point that in my late 20s, I still can't stand the sounds of analog clocks ticking and get nervous to look at the foot of my bed at night in case I see the figure again. I dated this girl for 3 years in college and never experienced paranormal activity prior to meeting her. It began with pennies showing up in our locked dorm room, small things being out of place, or lights and appliances mysteriously turning off, and we really just laughed it off. When we moved to an apartment and got a dog, things got noticeably worse. The feeling of being watched was insane, and our dog would watch scan rooms a lot, almost tracking something we couldn't see. He would aggressively growl down our hallway despite both of us being behind him in the kitchen making next to no noise. Bowls flew off countertops and things were getting out of hand. I still don't know how I processed this, but one night we were sleeping in a tall, like 14 to ceiling tall, lofted bed against the wall. She had the inside and I the outside. Somewhere around 4 a.m., dog barked once and I felt my ankles being gripped and yanked off the bed. In an effort not to fall, I had flipped from my back to stomach and grabbed my partner's waist torso, waking her in a panic. Once I stopped the initial fall, I let go of my partner and fell the remaining like 6 to the ground standing upright. We turned the lights on, and I had red marks on my ankles, and the dog was in his kennel. I tried to calm down, but really, I had no clue what happened, and neither did she. I haven't been an active sleeper, and actually, that's why as children, I was allowed the top bunk opposed to my sister. We broke up for unrelated reasons, and years down the road, it's clear to see that whatever energy my ex came with was not friendly, and I am glad nothing more serious happened. Thinking about it now still makes me uneasy. We have this abandoned house in the village I grew up where a family died under mysterious circumstances like ages ago. At least that's what the folks here says, and a few years ago, me, my sister, my brother and a friend had the great idea to go there and check it out. So we went there at like around midnight, and my brother and his friend went inside. Me and my sister stayed outside to keep an eye on the surroundings so we wouldn't get caught. I felt super uncomfortable as soon as we arrived and had the constant feeling of being watched, even though no one lived in that area because the direct neighbor passed away a few weeks prior. So my brother and his friend went in and me and my sister waited outside. We saw them walking from room to room for like 4 to 5 minutes when I noticed another kind of light in one of the windows next to the room my brother was in. So I immediately asked my sister if she has seen it too, thought well maybe my mind is just tripping, but she said she saw it too. So I kind of freaked out a little bit and texted my brother several times to get their butts out of there pretty quickly. But he doesn't answer. I started to panic because I felt so uncomfortable the whole time and nothing would have bring me into that house to tell them to get out, but eventually, his friend went over to a window on the front and told us they would finally come out. And like 2 seconds after he said that, all the streetlights around us shut down. Only the ones around us and the rest nearby, like on the next street, were working perfectly fine. The feeling of being watched got even more intense, and I know that sounds cliché, but it felt like the temperature dropped down. I was literally freezing and panicking and crushing my sister's hand while we waited for them to get out. When my brother and his friend came out, they just grabbed me and my sister, and we ran home without looking back. Later at home, both of them told us everything was fine at the beginning, but like after 5 minutes or so, they had the same feeling of being watched, even though there wasn't something out of the line, like just a dirty old abandoned house, but my brother sworn he had seen something moving in the mirror on the floor, where we've seen the other light from outside, and immediately felt like they weren't welcome there. I also asked him why he didn't answer the messages I sent him, and he said he haven't got any while they were inside. And I swear to God, I never was more terrified than that night. They were in there for not more than approximately 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. And since then, I never walked past that house alone or after sunset. At my old job, the upper level was a cafe, and the basement was our office and supplies room. The basement was creepy because it had an unfinished ceiling, it echoed a lot, and because of all the hidden corners, it always felt like someone was watching. My coworker and I were upstairs while our supervisor was downstairs. We started telling jokes before I got called down. I joked with my supervisor as well when, in the back corner that was always dark because the light got busted, we heard a woman's laugh. It wasn't like any voice we've ever heard before, and there were only 3 of us in the store. There were other instances, but we always joked that we should play Ouija in the store on Halloween, only for a few items to suddenly fall off the shelf. I was around 7 when I saw it. I'm a grown adult now, and to this day, I get frightened thinking about it. My family has always been sensitive to the supernatural. I remember being over at a family friend's house for some party. I think New Year's. Either way, it was definitely dark and spooky. There weren't many other little kids around except my 2 cousins who liked to avoid me, so I was mostly on my own. I was getting bored, and the wife of the house said I could go down to the basement where there was a playroom. Being a strong, independent child, I headed for the door to go down. It had a tan carpet steps and a sleek railing. The light was on, and as I took a few steps down, I could hear shuffling noises. Someone was rustling around down there. I assumed it was my cousins and I called their names. The noises abruptly stopped. I got maybe halfway down the stairs and something peeled out beyond the wall of the staircase. It couldn't have been taller than 4 feet. I remember it being small, but again, I was 7. It was just looking around the edge at me. It wasn't exactly formless, but it was weirdly round. And it was black. Blacker than ebony. The deepest, darkest black I have ever seen in my life, like it was some abyss, all except for 2 tiny, white pupil-less eyes that were ever so tiny. It was so sudden. I nearly fell down the stairs. I froze and stared at it for a few moments. When I looked at it, all I could think was that it wanted to hurt me. I knew it did. There was something so sinister and evil about the way it looked at me. I remember it leaning out more from beyond the pillar, just enough that I could see both eyes and mouth. It was smiling or baring its teeth. At that point, I screamed and turned to run back up, tripping over my own feet. I remember feeling so scared I thought I was going to die, and I could feel that whatever that was, thought it was the funniest thing in the world to watch me struggle. I slammed the door and went running for my mother. My dad went down there and didn't find anything. It was conveniently gone. To this day, the only person that's believed me has been my grandmother. Even my own mother, who's had a few paranormal experiences herself, thinks I was just tired. I will never forget that creature. I don't know what it is or where it came from, but I hope I never, ever have to see it again.